thank you everybody for coming and for waiting outside and being so excited to be here. We're excited that you came. We're going to do about 45 minutes of chatting up here amongst the three of us. And then we've got all kinds of good stuff in store for the end. We're going to Skype in the inspirations for the film, Sue and Saru. Yeah.
Let's hope that works.
And if you think of some questions, so I'll call on you toward the end. We'll set up some mics. If you're watching on Facebook, please post your questions in the comments, and I'll find them on here. So thanks everybody. These folks, I think it's going to be fun because you two are cracking each other up like crazy backstage.
Yeah, it's been a constant kind of, I've been ruining every one of Nicole's pictures on every red carpet because I'm so awkward.
Not.
You know, but she's, yeah.
No, we've been around the world together, so we've gotten to know each other really well.
Yeah, it's been cool, yeah.
Well,
We've got to get warmed up.
When a film's good, it's like you have the two stretches of getting to know each other, right? When you're making the film, and then the second, when everybody wants to talk to you about it and give you awards like 4 Golden Globes nominations. Right? Both of these actors get nominated.
Right.
So congrats on all that stuff that's happening. In the Times, we also gave the film a great review. Tony Scott raved about the film, but he said it's a small audience that this is going to appeal to. If you have ever been a child, raised a child, lost a child, or met a child, or any of the above with respect to a mother, this movie will wreck you. And he said a lot of other nice things about it. So,
Have you been a child, Dev?
Still think I am.
Did he leave out anything? I don't know. I guess he's got it covered. I thought so much of this film. Oh, actually, first of all, who here has seen the film?
Oh, wow, that's good.
Did anybody see the film and not cry? Okay, I didn't.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, as you know, it revolves around a young man who goes searching for his birth family, and it's kind of an amazing thing that his memory is so clear of his childhood that he's able to do this. So I thought I'd check and see how clear your memories are of your childhoods before we get into talking about the film. Because I kept watching this film and thinking, wow, like I can't remember a thing about when I was 5 years old, 4 years old. Little flashes here and there. For you, what's it like when you think? If I were to ask you, what was the first image that comes to your head when you think of being 4 or 5 years old?
Well, my mum accuses me of always looking at my childhood with rose-coloured glasses, which I say, Mum, that's a good thing, isn't it? So I sort of have this really, I have memories, because we travelled a lot, and I was born in Hawaii, and then we moved to Washington, D.C. My first memory is eating snow.
Oh, really?
In Washington, D.C., picking it up and going, it's cold, and seeing my parents throw snowballs at each other. And my mum says, no, you just remember that because you saw a photo. And I go, no, I really remember that. And I was 2.
That's amazing.
So.
And you can picture it. Do you have a visual memory?
I actually have the sensation and the memory of the sensations and the actual flickering thoughts. And I really feel that it's true, even though she challenges me on that.
Right. It wasn't all that.
Hey, it's my life. But I do sort of tend to look back at the past with, for me and my childhood, as being incredibly, well, comparatively, obviously, an incredibly blessed childhood. But I also had, and I'm so happy to be able to say this as a girl, a great father. And I have a great mother too, but it's just lovely to be able to say, yes, my father passed away 2 years ago, so I love to say that. I was raised by a great father and a great mother, and I like saying that, and I like saying it publicly because it really sort of gives them the acknowledgement for the time and the work that they put in. Okay.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, if you were to just a flash of what it was like to be 5, what memories cue up?
Oh man,
5 or 4.
It wasn't that long ago. It was a long time ago for me.
I think I remember my great-grandmother giving me a bath, and I remember she had a bar of soap, and she would, everywhere, under my armpit, she'd sweep her off, lifting me up, in my hair, the bar of soap. And I'm looking at her, and she was just this woman from a village in India, and I remember the tattoos on her arm, and it was like, I miss her. But yeah, same thing. That's what I remember.
Yeah, yeah. I thought, since we're talking about memory, I have a few more memory questions. So what film do you first remember loving, like really loving a movie?
Well, of course, for me, The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But I've always said I was so interested in the Wicked Witch and not Dorothy. Which, what does that say? Because I remember seeing those stripy red stockings when they curl up after the house lands. So that was like, wow. And then seeing the witch with her green face and those flying monkeys. They've definitely penetrated many of my nightmares over the... But yeah, that was probably the first. But then I was very into literature. I was raised on reading books. So as much as I'm an actress and I work in film, I was actually raised on literature. Mm-hmm. And that's probably what caused me to become an actress. Because I would get lost in the stories, and I would read big novels when I was very, very young, and I really credit that with building my imagination and building my desire to tell stories. Yeah.
How about you? What's the first film you remember loving?
Probably Enter the Dragon. Yeah, it was Enter.
Yeah.
It was Bruce Lee.
Oh, that's right. You're into martial arts too.
Yeah. I snuck downstairs and watched it through the banister. I saw this guy, and he was just like, "Wow!" And I was like, "Wow!" That was the moment I wanted to be an actor. Actually,
that was the moment you wanted to be. Wow.
Yeah. It was way past my bedtime, obviously, because the film's very violent. But it was super cool.
Nicole, what was that moment for you when you realized that acting was something you might actually be able to do?
Well, growing up in Australia, it's actually it's more of like a fantasy. When I was the generation that I came from, the industry wasn't really there to support it. So it was more like, oh, in my dreams, that would be great. And then I would, sort of become, my parents would say, yes, but that's not really going to happen, so what do you really want to do? and I'd go, well, I'd like to be a lawyer, or I'd like to be a doctor. My father was a doctor. So I would, I'd kind of be forced into those paths. But I think when I was 17 and I saved my money. I started working when I was 14, and I would save my money. And I was able to do a down payment on a small flat that was above a shop when I was 17 years old. It was one bedroom, and my dad would come and spackle the walls and paint them and everything, but it was my place. Right. And that's when I went, I'm actually going to be able to do this. At least have somewhere to sleep. And that I think that's primarily was their concern, is that being a child, when you're entering into a career, they want you to be able to make some money and take care of yourself, and they just thought that acting wasn't going to be able to do that because there wasn't the industry to carry you. But hey, I'm still here.
And I'm curious, when you were watching films, and we've got a lot of fans of yours here. I'm wondering who the two of you were fans of at that age. Was there somebody you tried to walk like, styled your hair like, dressed like? I once went into and tried to get my hair cut like MacGyver once back when I had hair. It's absurd. But how about you two?
Come on, Dev, I can't talk all the time.
Mine was Bruce Lee, like I said, it's
splitting image.
No. It was Bruce Lee, Jim Carrey, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Those are the three.
I see it.
Yeah. What was the Schwarzenegger movie that flipped him for you?
You know what? There was so many. I mean, Terminator was just awesome. But I remember watching this film Commando as well. I mean, when you're a kid, you don't understand nuance of performance or those things. So you're just looking for a spectacle. And all of those three, like Jim Carrey with his rubber face and Arnold and Bruce with their respective muscles and stuff, it's just very exciting and very escapist for me as a kid. Yeah.
I didn't think we'd end up talking about Schwarzenegger.
I know.
That's great.
Oh man, you asked. So,
Yeah.
Sorry.
How about you? Was there one actor you remember just loving more than the others back when you were younger?
You said, no, I'm going to answer the
Okay.
question.
Oh, sorry.
Who did I want to look like?
That.
I wanted to look like Olivia Newton-John in Grease. So I do have a few shots in the tight Grease pants.
At the end of Grease.
Yeah, at the end of Grease, thank you. Which my mother would go, oh, take those off, Nicole. So that's what I wanted to look like. But I actually, in terms of artistically, I was always left of centre. I was always very much following sort of the European actresses. And I think also what I was just drawn to, because I've now started to piece together some of the reasons why I'm sort of probably lateral, is, you know, I'm left-handed and I was raised by quite a provocative mama who used to challenge everything, and also in terms of just where we came from, we lived in a very conservative area, but my parents were not conservative. So I was already different at school. I was very tall. I had curly red hair, which I've perpetually straightened my whole life, and I still grapple with all the time, even though I do embrace the curl, just not today. And I think I was just always drawn to things that were different, people that didn't conform, and stories that were not necessarily heroic. And so I was that was a windy path for me, but it's who I am, and I give over to it, and I've always attached to the underdog. When I was at school, that was who I would befriend. That's what I liked to be with. I probably considered myself an underdog as well, and that's what I'm drawn to.
That's so true. When you talk about, it's interesting the way you talked about your mother, you know, kind of pushing back at you in the earlier story too, about the rose-colored glasses and saying no.
Yeah.
How do you think that shaped you? And what was that kind of challenging like? I mean, I think a lot of parents just want to support.
She was a feminist. She came out of the time when she fought hard for a lot of the things that I just take for granted now. She instilled that in me very early. So she's obviously, I mean, I speak about her a lot, so she's had a massive impact on me. And I credit her a lot with the way in which she formed my sister and I, and the way we are wired and the way we think. But I also credit my dad. But I think because she came from that generation where she probably would have liked to have been a doctor herself, and she didn't. She couldn't, for certain reasons, which, you know, I won't go into. But I suppose she then raised two girls with the idea of you can be and do anything you want to do. And I'm grateful for that, so grateful, because that put me in a place, and she sent me to an all-girls school. And that formed me as well. And it was a selective school, so it was a very competitive academic school, which, you know, wasn't necessarily geared towards the arts, which was an interesting combination.
And so again, you're sort of the outsider of that school.
Because I would have to, as much as I loved, strangely enough, as an actress, I loved mathematics. I would just, that was my favourite subject. Yet I would then go home and read, and my private time, my off time was reading. Anyway, shut up, Nicole.
This is fascinating.
No, I feel like I'm talking too much, but I suppose we're
That's
here to
what
talk.
they came for, yeah.
I know, but it feels like we're in a living room right now, and I'm dominating the conversation.
Well, for you, what was? Were you a kid who was like in school plays? I know you started your career very young, but before the huge break of Slumdog Millionaire, before Skins, and were you focused on acting and doing classes or school plays, that kind of thing, or no?
I was very hyperactive, and my mum was desperately trying to figure out a way to channel this energy. And, you know, so there was the whole Bruce Lee martial arts angle. I was practicing keyboard, I was doing everything. But the thing that really stuck was one of my teachers was like, you've got to put him in the school play. So it was this Shakespeare production of Twelfth Night. And I ended up playing this character called Sir Andrew Aguecheek. And, you know, it's period, so we put on these football socks and had the garters and all that kind of stuff. And I won this little award. And then from then on in school, and it was the first time I felt like I'd connected. And I saw my dad, who's a very kind of, you know, he doesn't kind of express much, you know, moved. And my mum, you know, I could see the pride in her eyes, and I felt like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And so that's really, I was doing pantomime in school, really, until she saw this open casting in a newspaper to do skins, yeah. That's how I got that, yeah.
It's so great. I mean, that story still, you know, his mother sees she's on a train, right?
Yeah,
I think that's right. And she just sees a post, was it a posting that's saying?
She traveled, she was a carer for the elderly at the time, and she goes on the tube. There's a free newspaper called the Metro on every chair. And in the back there was a little newspaper cutting, and it said, new teenage drama on E4, which is like a sister program of Channel 4. No acting experience necessary. If you're 16 to 18 and you want to be on TV, then come down to the National Youth Theatre on this day. And I had my exams at that time. Not that I really cared, but she tore it out and didn't tell me until the day before. And she's like, oh, by the way, tomorrow we're going to bunk off the morning of school and we're going to go to this. And I was just so upset, and I was, you know, this teenager that didn't want to be pushed out of his comfort zone or embarrassed, and I was like, Mom, I hate you, why? I'm like, there's no Indians on TV, this is stupid. And she's like, I don't know, I thought she'd gone insane. And she's like, I don't know why, but we're going to take your school uniform, take your school books, or you can practice on the train for your exam, and we'll wait. And we queued outside, and there was all these drama students doing their vocal warm-ups and all that kind of stuff. And I was there with my Indian mum, you know, making sure my hair is straight. It was just horrible. And then they just pair you with two people. You two, here's a script going, you two. And it was around the block. And, you know, it's like American Idol or something. And I started reading like I would in 12th Night. I was like, hey, and it was really big, and they're like, all right, do it again, but now say it like you're on the phone to your friend that you've known for ages. So I did it again, and then they all started smiling, and they called us straight in and said, yeah, we really like him, and that was the beginning.
That's such a good story. I'm so glad. I mean, so again, moms to thank. Like, it goes along with the theme of this film, which is so much about. Sure, I will get us back on track. I promise.
Yeah, you just did. That's an amazing segue.
Because this film is so much about, searching for your roots, going back to your roots, remembering, and that relationship between a mother and a son that gets severed, a family and a son that gets severed. I guess not everyone has seen the film, so the first hour of the film was this wonderful kid, Sonny Pawar. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about him. He was 6 years old when he was shooting the film, right? Mm-hmm. What is that kid like on set? Is he as amazing as he is in the film?
Well, he arrived and he didn't speak any English, so I mean he wasn't an actor, and Garth Davis, who's the director, who's a fantastic director who co-directed Top of the Lake with Jane Campion. I don't know if anyone saw that, but it was a really special limited series. Yeah. And this is his first feature film. So, but he had a very strong sense of how to rehearse. And he brought Sonny in. He fought for the rehearsal period, which a lot of times on low-budget films gets lost because there isn't the money, and they go, well, the first thing we can lose is the rehearsal, which, as an actor, you go, oh, please don't lose that. So he fought for that, and we had that that week, which we needed, because when you work with a small child who's not an actor, you have to spend the time. And he arrived, and Garth said, right, the way you're going to rehearse with him is you're going to play sport with him, Nicole. And I was like, oh, God. Okay. And I'm not, I mean, I try, but I'm not the most athletic. I mean, I can kind of hit a ball, but not really. So I was faking it. But he bonded us through cricket and soccer. But first cricket and then soccer. You're athletic, so it was easy for you.
Yeah, he was picked from 2,000 kids.
Yeah.
And I was in India, you know, waiting to do my stuff, and Garth was, it was just crazy. It was like daddy daycare, but with like hundreds of Indian kids crying babies and stray dogs, and he's searching, and they found Sonny from 2,000 kids. He'd never been on a plane before, never been in front of a camera, let alone seen a Hollywood film, and he leads the film for, you know, more than the first half of it, and again, like Nicole was saying, we have a really amazing director who is able to create atmosphere, and and you know, set the stage perfectly for this child to roam freely in, and it requires the other actors, like Priyanka in India, Nicole in Australia, to really kind of, you know, nurture him into that space, and his children are just beautifully open and reactive. So, yeah.
'Cause I imagine it would just be a natural reaction to close up if you're that kid, to just be overwhelmed and pull back from the challenge. And he clearly doesn't in the film, but.
Well, he had sort of a language with Garth, which was through just miming, and I mean, Garth would do things like hit here, and Sonny would understand what that meant. So they built their language, which was not verbal, which is fantastic with a child. Right. And then we all kind of moved with that and built our language too. I mean, it was different because I was female, and so he had a different reaction to me, and I had to sort of always go, he'd sometimes sort of push me away, and I'd be like, gentle, soft with me, soft. And he'd sort of wink at me and smile. But the other thing, which I think says what a good director Garth is that when you work with children, he would keep the camera rolling, and he would just shoot and shoot. And so it started, there was no action and cut. There's more just like moving and into places and finding the scenes that way, which is a great way to work. I mean, everyone has different criteria, directors, when they work, but Garth's is very fluid, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, 100%.
So.
It's such an ambitious first film to take on working with an inexperienced kid like this, so young.
And India, shooting on the streets of India, and but he's ambitious, but he's also radiant, I have to say, as a person. He's one of those people that is just, and I think you can see it in the film, you feel his heart and his radiance, and that's wonderful when he also has the grasp of the cinematic language, because he's directed a lot of commercials, so he was able to cinematically, and we have to sort of throw props to Greg, who shot it as well, because they have they're a great combo.
Well, Nicole gave me a segue this time said you can see it in the film, and we have a clip of the first time Nicole's character Sue meets young Saru.
Fantastic, right?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, to get that level of comfort to play someone's mother, to play a young child's mother, must be different than simply working with a kid in a comedy or something. You know, there's a bond that you've really got to establish that you see in these scenes. Yeah,
you have to establish trust, actually. And there's scenes where, like, I have to give him a bath, and when you bathe a child, I mean, that's a very exposed, vulnerable place for a child. So to get him to let me do that requires just, I mean, it's just time. You have to put in the time, and you have to build the trust with the with him. But he's a really bright boy too, and he's really sweet. We've actually, he's not coming on now, unfortunately, but we've had him around, and he's been doing some things, and he speaks English now, which is a beautiful thing to have seen happen over the course of.
Picked up so quickly.
Yeah. So.
That's amazing. I mean, and I wonder, as you were reading this script, as an adoptive mother, I imagine you could read another script that wouldn't handle that dynamic well. You know, that wouldn't ring true to your experience, or to the thoughts you have about adoption and that relationship. When you read this script, what did ring true about it?
Well, there's so many different ways in which you can tell a story about a birth mother and an adoptive mother. There's many different, it's complicated, and there's many different ways in which you can tell. This particular story resonated with me because a lot of times you don't find out about how the adoptive mother feels in terms of the birth mother, that the love is there. From the minute you hold the child, the love is there for the birth mother because, and this is from my experience, because of you're all connected. It's like, so there's some weird thing that just happens, and whether you ever get to meet her or not, there's like a thread that exists between you that will always be there. And I think that's what the film handles beautifully, and the way in which Luke Davies wrote the line, and Sue said it, so it's beautiful when she says, I can't wait for her to meet you, because she'll see, for you to find her, because she'll see how beautiful you are. And it's like, I think that taps into what an adoptive mother feels. And Sue says herself that she would think many times of Saru's birth mother and try to send her messages saying, he's safe. I want you to know he's safe. And that to me is just, that's exquisite, and that's unconditional love, and that's very, very pure. And it's deeply emotional for me.
Yeah.
So.
And we see in the film that Saru, he loves his mother so much. He loves Sue so much that he doesn't ever want to upset her, and so he holds what is kind of the biggest secret of his life, that he's tormented by these memories, and he's searching for the town where he grew up. He holds that back from his mother. Why do you think it's so important to him to keep that a secret?
Well, I think it's more about the gratitude and respect he has for the mother that gave him a second chance at life. Sue, and he really loves her, and he didn't want her to ever feel that he was ungrateful. This is that journey to find his mother, was to answer those unanswered questions that had been plaguing him for so long, and he wanted to just make sure they were okay and that they knew he was okay. That's a really tough thing to be plagued with, every day. And so, when I first met Saru, we sat down and had breakfast together when we were filming in Hobart, not too far from where the family lives, and he spoke about astral travel, which I'd never heard of before. And the concept of when he first moved to Australia as a child, every time his mother put a map on the wall of the world, and she pointed out where India was. And he looked at it, and she's like, that's where you've come from. And every night he would go to sleep, his heart would start to race. And he would feel like he was physically coming out of his body, floating above the earth. And then he would all of a sudden hover above India and materialize with his family. And he would tell his mother and his brother that he's okay. And he would do this every night. And he goes, I'd wake up sweating and exhausted, like I'd physically done it every night. I'd do this. And that's how I could hold those memories so preciously and tightly. And then it just so happened that this app came out that paralleled what he was doing in his head. You hover above the globe and then zoom into India. And it's really amazing when you hear him speak about it.
Yeah. And the app, of course, is Google Maps that he uses by combining his very specific visual memories with certain landmarks and items. I mean, it still was a story that's so hard to believe that this worked out. It's, as you talk to Saru about that process, and of course the film, by the way, is based on his memoir, A Long Way Home, as well. But I'm wondering, all those hours you must have spent on set staring at that laptop, trying to make those scenes work. How did what you learned from Saru influence that part of the performance?
Yeah, I think that the concept, I've done a lot of fake computer acting in my career, playing nerds and stuff, you know. But this is far more emotional, you know. And Saru, you know, the concept was that, you know, with every click of that mouse, with every scroll, he was getting one step closer to finding her, his destiny. And that's a really emotional process, you know, and a relationship to have with technology. So, and Garth, again, to keep bringing his name into this, because he really is a maestro at this. When I was in India to do the whole, you know, the preparation, that we all had our different things to do, and mine was to travel the trains and watch Sunny perform, and he made us play in the field that I walked through at the end, and he recorded the sound of these leaves, and Sunny laughing and Priyanka, you know, tickling him. And then when I'm sitting in cold Tasmania, sitting in front of this blank screen, or, you know, I could never wrangle the app, so I was sometimes over Russia or Korea, and I'm crying like, Mum, you know, but it's, like he would play the sound of them in India, and it instantly escorts you to this place, you know, to a place of nostalgia, and it's a real emotion that you can tap into that you had, yeah.
So it's just to clarify, it's the sound of the leaves?
Yeah, that he'd recorded on the, and he would play it back in the room on a speaker. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, you know, I can feel it. And it just changes everything about how you're reacting with a blank screen.
Yeah. And Nicole, how did you prepare? Did you also talk to Sue before the film shooting began?
Yeah, I mean, she's very open to me. And I sent down a friend of mine to go interview her because I wanted her to be really open and not sort of anything else to get in the way. And I said, would it be all right if he just asked you a lot of questions and you answered them and I'd record them and then we meet so I can absorb you before we have anything enter into it other than just your life. So, and she did that for me, which was amazing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What kind of questions would you ask?
Everything. I just asked all about, from being a little girl all the way through to present day. I know so much about her now. And then she flew to Sydney, and we sat in my apartment and we just talked and talked and talked. And it rarely happens where you meet somebody, one, that you're going to play, but two, that you just go, I love you. And she's very tactile and affectionate, and I respond well to being touched. So she would touch me and stroke my hand, even just meeting me. And she just said to me, you're going to be able to do this, and I've wanted you to play me. And we just shared, and she's now a huge part of my life, and I'm never letting her leave my life. Feels a very big part of my life in terms of this person who's incredibly non-judgmental and warm to me, and just nothing else but just sort of genuine, kind love. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. So I hope we get to Skype with her, because you'll see she's really deeply maternal and very special. And she also, and I do want to acknowledge also Mantosh, because as much as this film isn't about Mantosh, she has another son, and he's in it, but it's not his story. But she's been incredibly good to him, and he's been so good to her, and they're a very tight family. Yeah. And Mantosh needs to be acknowledged in the family as well. Yeah. And John, her husband, the two of them. I mean, they both adopted together. And the other interesting aspect of them is that, as she says, she just was never going to have the experience of birthing a child. That was her choice. And so she knew that from very early on, as a teenage girl, actually, is when she made that choice. And when she married John, they met as teenagers. I think they were 17. I may be wrong, but it was very early. And she said, just know I'm never going to birth a child, so I hope you're okay with me adopting. That's what we're going to do. Is that okay? Because if it isn't, I want to, full disclosure. And he was like, I love you. And whatever you want, and that's our path together. So, and that's what they did. And at that time, the laws in Australia were very difficult for adoption. So, I mean, it was a big challenge for them. but they did it. And as you can see, I mean, to such a wonderful outcome.
Yeah. And Dev, you mentioned going to India, riding the trains, and I think I read somewhere you spent something like 8 months kind of thinking only of this project, not looking at other roles. Why devote so much time to this film, and how do you use that time?
It's really simple. I mean, you look at such an astounding script. I've never been sent anything like that, you know, and I have to think, God, I've never had the luxury as a Indian actor to be able to go on a journey with so much soul and pain and depth. You know, I mean, I'll get sent the goofy sidekick or, you know, that kind of thing, but to have a journey like this and to be able to share the screen with Nicole and Rooney and David and all those tremendous actors, that is special. And, you know, I called up my manager straight away and I was like, look, I'm not playing with this one. Like, we've got to commit every fiber to getting this journey right, not only because the script demands it, but, you know, so do the real people, you know. And so we, you know, a lot of it was Garth saying, I was doing a film with Jeremy Irons where I was even more skinnier than I am right now. I was a wafer with the short buzz cut hair, and he's like, we need you to grow your hair and we want to make you a bit more masculine, I guess. I was like, oh, thanks, man. And, you know, it was the accent was, you know, something that was tough for me to grapple with because I'm not very good at them. And it was also...
So good at the Australian accent.
I had Jenny Kent, this amazing dialect coach, and yeah, it was going to India and doing a pilgrimage as Saru, you know, the trains, meeting Mrs. Sood, who's this woman who's now in her 90s, I think, who's first extended this picture and said this could be a new life for you, you know, when he was in this terrible orphanage. And it's just incredible. It's life-changing, you know.
And the Sydney Morning Herald, by the way, vouches for the accent, says you nailed it. What is a bad Australian, like an American or a British actor trying to do an Australian? What does a bad one sound like?
Well, you've heard them.
Yeah. Care to name names?
No. Come on, you try to do an Australian accent.
Oh, crikey. I don't know.
There we go.
Yeah, that's terrible.
That was bad.
The reason I spend my life on my laptop and reporting.
I'm sorry. It's a tough accent. It really is a tough accent.
Yeah. So you had a dialogue.
That's why
You made him shine, Nicole.
I did.
I know.
I'm trying to pull my skirt down because I've realised I've worn way too short a skirt for this stage. All right. Next question.
All right. How about a clip? We'll do a clip. We got a clip of Dev's. We've been talking about Dev's great performance, so we've got a nice scene with Dev. Crikey. I took the mood in a whole other different direction.
Angry.
That dynamic, that the idea that he's. I'm sorry, just keep thinking my Australian accent.
Try some more. Come on.
I'll try. All right. With what he's talking about in that scene is other people not understanding what he's going through. What is driving him to search?
This is such a big.
I'm just really.
Let's get out. Let's get out. Sorry. This is a big moment. Nicole makes me laugh sometimes. Oh man. Okay.
I'm getting blamed. What is this?
Yeah, I can see you. Sorry. This is okay. Sorry.
All right.
No, I'm just talking about what's going on in Saru's mind as he's, you know, this scene in the relationship with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
She just can't comprehend what he's feeling. So what is he feeling?
You know, it kind of Lucy's role in the film is kind of this force that is trying to force him back into the present. You know, because you start off as Luke Davies, our writer, describes that. You know, you follow this child through this film, and then all of a sudden there's this moment where he comes out of the water in Tasmania, and it's like a baptism, and it's the birth of this Australian, really. And you know, he's been shunning this Indianness, this heritage, this past, to try and fit in, and it's that bottling up is starting to consume him, and she's trying to force him to be here and be here now, be with me. And there's so much uncertainty, you know, trying to find this needle in a haystack. She's, you know, his mother could have moved. Anything could have happened to the family. You know, it's just so insane that he was so consumed by this that he left his job, and he was, you know, a real pillar of strength in the family. And it's that moment when he just has to let it all slip out. You know what it's like to go to bed knowing that his older brother is screaming his name every night. You know, searching for him, whilst he's living this life. You know, going to parties, drinking beers. You know. It's that duality that is tearing him apart. Yeah.
When, you know, it's such an emotional film. We talked about everybody in the audience crying. You know, I was crying. My mom was crying when we watched the movie. But what's the difference in reading a script or working with a director who makes a film that ends up feeling manipulative or feeling too, you know, syrupy or like it's trying to jerk your tears versus one like this? Tony Scott at the Times was talking about, you know, this is a film that's very emotional, but it earns that in a kind of clear way, is the way he described it. But when you're working on different projects, I'm sure some just feel more true or honest than others. In those, how does Garth achieve that in this film? You know, to not push it too far into a kind of a maudlin direction. Or is it all a little?
I mean, well, I think it's just truth. I mean, the way in which he guides it and his personality. I mean, you see the personality of a director in their films, obviously, because they're the choices that they make, and they're the ones who are steering the whole vision. So it's their choices and how they mold it. So this is very much of him. And I think when you're, as an actor, you're contributing, you're not leading. So you are, and for me, I love coming in and being able to explore many different ways in which a scene can play out and find it. And so that means exposing myself so that they have choices. And therefore they can edit it and shape it in particular ways. There's other actors that won't do that. They choose how the performance is going to be and they structure it and that's it. And you cannot then maneuver within that. But I like trying things and you never know, and giving them so that when they're in the editing room, they do have, I mean, I'll have strong ideas, but I do want the direct, because you never know with film. It's such a, something you thought was going to work suddenly doesn't work. Something you think is coming across isn't there. I mean, and I always say, for me, when I watch something, if I'm 70% happy, that means it's really good, because I'm so tough on myself. So 70% is amazing. I've never gotten over that. In terms of that's probably where I hit. If it's 20%, it's not very good, and usually I end up somewhere around 40 or 50% happy. So, but that's just because I know what I was hoping for and trying for, and what I feel inside, and therefore then what ends up being. But I'm not right. I'm just aiming for something, and that may not be what's needed. So, it's fascinating actually, and having worked with so many directors who are very strong and a lot of auteurs, seeing the way they guide their vision and what they choose and how they do it, that's exquisite. I mean, I'm still so curious and fascinated with the art form of filmmaking. I love it, and I love being a part of it, and I love seeing it grow and then seeing it come to fruition. And sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes it isn't. And at 49 years old, I go, I want to still stay in a place of being brave and not caring, you know, if something doesn't work, because otherwise you're never going to surprise or find new places to exist in.
Yeah. I think the first time that I
but that's how I feel. So
I think I'd never really understood restraint, and Garth is a champion of restraint. You know, there's a lot of times when you're doing those laptop scenes or doing something. It's funny you show that clip because that's the one where he goes for it.
Right.
But actually,
much quieter than.
But yeah, it's a really quiet performance, and he pushes you to that space. You want to be as a performer, you want to go there and like, and do that kind of stuff and display all this, all these things, these gadgets you've accumulated on each film. And and also it comes down to that thing, there's no spoiler in saying that the atmosphere, that scene at the end, spoiler alert. I'll do this when it's over if anyone's listening. But, when there's that reunion, me and Priyanka are in India in the middle of nowhere, and I had nothing to do for 3 weeks, so we would have dinner every night and talk about the characters. And then a week and a half before that shot, which was my first shot in the film, he said, "You're no longer allowed to see each other." And I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "No, you can't, don't spend any more time together." And he starved us of this energy, of this friendship. And I experienced her in this scene as you did, as an audience. I'm walking around this corner, and they found the only English speaker in this village, this man who was a local school teacher who I show this picture. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm this guy, I'm looking for my brother and my mother." And he walks around the corner, and I'm walking through this alleyway, and in the distance I see these 3 women. And as I get closer, I see it's Priyanka, and she's got this amazing makeup. They've aged her. And we just collide, we just come together. And everyone around us, there was no planted extras, they were all real villagers from that town. So she had told them, which I wasn't aware of, that I'm about to meet my son, who I haven't met in 20 years. And I'm going to meet him today. He's coming. So I'm speaking English in an Aussie accent. They don't know what I'm saying, so they're purely reacting to the truth of that moment. And we hug and we're crying, and she's touching my face. And all of a sudden, I can hear sniffles, and everyone else's hands start reaching up. Like you're an avatar, they're all... Yeah. And, we couldn't keep resetting and cutting, because it's like being in a coliseum. They start to see the illusion. They're like, there's some of the boys in the back. And they start giggling, so you have to be in it. And then Garth will come in and go, "Just go a bit apart and try that bit again." And you have to do it, grab it quickly before everyone kind of turns feral and sees this illusion. But it's really down to him. He's amazing at doing that.
So in this film is, it's a rare positive story about technology, right? Usually it's a dystopia, robots are taking over the planet. This is actually a really romantic story about technology. And now we're going to try some technology here with Skype. So be patient with us if it's a little spotty. We're going to do our best. But if it works, we're going to have the pleasure of meeting Saru and Sue Brierley. Again, Saru, the film is adapted from the memoir A Long Way Home by Saru. We will see if this works, and then I'll take some questions from our Facebook page right now. I've got them on this iPad right here, so we're so high-tech.
Hey!
Can they see us?
I hope they can see you.
Hey! What's up, guys?
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Saru, you handsome bastard.
Got some business here, Dev, because last time I got a kick from you. So.
Darling Sue, mwah. How are you holding up?
Pretty well. We're doing good. We're ready to head off on our big tour around Australia next week.
Awesome.
We're going to do lots of talking and praising you very much, and wonderful we think you are.
Oh, dear.
We miss you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, we do too.
We miss you too.
We
Is it
had
warm there?
withdrawal symptoms.
It's cold here. We're in New York. It's warm there, right?
Warm here, lovely. Sorry.
Just rubbing it in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
We've been taking questions from all the people watching online, and I'll read a few of those to you. The first one we have is for Saru. How did it feel to watch your younger self, to watch the fantastic 6-year-old actor play you?
It was great. It was amazing. I really didn't know what I was in for, really. I had read the script, and a few times, and Mum as well. But when I came down I was a bit nervous to sort of see, what would sort of come about and what they've done. And I sat down and I wanted to see the movie by myself without Mum and Dad sort of seeing it with me. And so when I saw it, and at the end, I was just my fingers, they were just like holding tight to the seat because, I was so sort of submerged in the film of myself and filling in the areas where I was sort of telling myself this happened in this specific phase and stage of the movie. But, it was just so enthralling, and, I was sweating, and there was times where I'm just trying to hold back the tears of, all those sort of life-threatening events and the emotions and everything that was sort of going on at the point of time. But, yeah, kudos to everyone that's produced this movie and acted in it. It's an amazing movie, and I've seen it about 8 times. And you know what? There isn't like a moment where you're like, on board of this movie. I want to do something. It's just there's always new things that are popping up, and you can see sort of themes coming up in the movie as well. There's just so much attributes that I'm even finding myself to this movie, as well as, being the author of A Long Way Home. And, I'm really sort of thinking about my life, and it's like, there's things that reoccur that has happened as a child, and now it's recurring as an adult, the way that I'm strategic and diplomatic about things. And, I'm really happy, that everyone gets to see this amazing, profound, enchanting movie.
So, Sue, we heard a little bit about your first meeting with Nicole. She was telling us how wonderful it was, and also that she sent an emissary over with questions that she then listened to later. What does it feel like to have Nicole Kidman play you and meet her for the first time?
Oh, well, from the second it was told to me that my dream had come true in that regard, I decided, really, you don't often get your wishes in life, it's often a compromise and really with the filmmaking, so much of this project is out of our hands. We lived the life. The story was written and based on Saru's book, but then we passed it over as a project, and I guess, we had to really trust that everyone would do the best by it, and they certainly have. It was quite hard knowing it was all happening, and then seeing it, then deciding, yes, that's fantastic, but the apprehension was sort of there in some parts of it. But I certainly trusted Nicole to do just an amazing job, which, she filmed for, I don't know, hundreds of hours. So in a way, there's so much more in the can that would have been quite traumatic to produce. And my biggest issue was that I often felt coming off the set that Nicole would be quite fragile, because I know it's tough, I've been there. And yeah, so I always kept that in mind. So I really appreciate the depth of the performance, because I know it from first-hand life, and she totally got it. You got it, darling Nicole, you got it.
I'm curious, being so exposed in public is something a lot of people are not used to and aren't built for. Saru, you've obviously traveled with the memoir. There have been television documentaries, news stories. What's different about traveling around with this film in terms of the way people respond to the two of you?
I think there's from people being on the sort of literary tour and in Australia and around the world, people can imagine, what I went through by the sort of the images that sort of come up in their minds. But when it comes up something like this, it's a little bit more going to another dimension, another sort of sense that's been heightened, and it's so gripping that people are just so enthralled by it that they want to know more about other things that have come about for themselves, because every individual person that leaves the theatre after watching this movie has got lots of questions and see life in different ways that some of them people are find that they're so amazed and it gives them hope and feel that there is hope in destiny and love and determination and just I guess strangers that generally just want to help out. But there's this. I've had so many questions that people have just asked about all sorts of things and just having sort of their own trials and tribulations about things. And there's not answers and there's no questions that's been asked all the time. It's always been different questions because each individual person, whether they're young or old, they have they see it in different ways. And it's amazing that this movie can actually make them feel sort of from having a facade put up there of not being able to talk about things, whatever it may be, that they're actually to diffuse that and let it out and feel